Hey everybody, Tammy. Let's do Tech Time with Tammy. Today the topic is going to be on sealers. Dennis Price gave me a good recommendation and he said, I think you should talk about sealers today. I think you should talk about why to use them, different kinds of sealers, and I thought that was a great topic, so that's what I'm going to discuss. So there's different kinds of sealers. There's 1K sealers, there's 2K sealers, there's epoxy as a sealer as well. So when you're using one, you could choose between any of those. Do I like a 1K sealer? Absolutely not. And it's not something that you will see me recommend. There are some different ones in the market. There are some that people have had good success with. If you want to use it, have at it. You just won't get me recommending one. I personally like things that are tried and true, and I like 2K sealers. I think a 2K sealer that is a cross-linkable product between all layers is what you should aim for, whether that be a DTM, a true standalone sealer, or an epoxy. So what are the other sealers? The other sealers that we also have in the industry and here at Revolt would be, we have the 2K 223 series primer in 4 different colors that you can change the mix ratio and turn it into a sealer. So if you change the mix ratio to a 4:1:2, 4 being primer, 1 being hardener, 2 being the reducer, that would turn it into a sealer for you. I will always recommend a slow reducer when you're doing that process. Realize you're adding a considerable amount of reducer to cut the solids down to make the viscosity where you want it to be. If you do too fast, it's going to make the sealer flash too quickly. It's going to give you dry spray. It's going to give you texture. It's not going to be the smoothest absolute finish off the gun, and that is what you're aiming for when you're doing sealer. So always go with a slow and or an extra slow reducer. That way you have that slow flash, that nice spray that just melts in the way that you want it to. Most people like to just do a 1 coat of sealer, and that's all that you really need to do when it comes to it. Sealer's main purpose and main idea is to give you one uniform color for coverage to be able to go over it with your base or your single stage. So do you have to use a sealer? No, do not have to use a sealer. You will see that a lot of people in the collision industry, it's a very collision-minded product, will tend to use sealers for that very quick wet-on-wet application that allows them to have a chemical bond between the sealer and the base moving forward. If something is already one uniform color, there really is no reason to use a sealer, and I tell that to people all the time. You could skip it. If your vehicle is already in a gray primer and you're going to go with a color that will perfectly cover over top of a gray, if the surface is perfectly even, smooth, all one color, you can go over top of it and not have any issues with adhesion, not have any issues with coverage, and everything will work the way it needs to. If you decide that you wanted to do a sealer, you absolutely can. You can go wet on wet and, do your sealer coat, do your base, go to your clear, bam, done. So if that's something that you want to do, you absolutely can do it. But if you're a newbie and you're trying to figure out, do I need to purchase sealer with this order? Do I need to seal my vehicle if it's already in one coat or multiple coats of primer and already one color? No, you don't have to. Now, let's say you're going to be doing a job where you did all your body work, everything's done, you left it in gray primer, but you really need to get it in black because you're going to do like a candy pearl, or you're going to do a custom color and it needs to go over a black. You could just go over top of it with a black base coat, or you could just go over top of it with a black sealer. Black sealer is less money, and you only have to do 1 coat. So a lot of guys like to use sealer and that type of a thing. So if I'm selling a guy who wants to do a candy pearl, you will see me say, well, you could just use a black sealer. And if you use the black sealer, you can skip the base and then you don't have to do that. So that's something that you can do. You also can take an epoxy. Can you also take the epoxy and turn it into a sealer as well? So that's another option. I like the epoxy turned into a sealer option on a lot of different things, especially on plastics. It allows you to skip the allows you to skip the adhesion promoter step and the sealer step and do everything all in one. So it allows it to go over top of every single type of plastic, which is something that adhesion promoters don't always let you do, but an epoxy as a sealer will stick to every single substrate without issue, including fiberglass and metal and everything, and every kind of plastic. So I definitely like it for that option, especially when it comes to all the various different types of bumpers and things now, whether it's the OEM or if they're aftermarket or if they're E-coated or whatever it may be. The epoxy is something that works really well. And you just do the 1-1-1 on ours. So 1 epoxy, 1 hardener, 1 reducer. With ours, you do have to wait a 30-minute induction. Doesn't matter if it's a sealer or if it's as the epoxy primer, still needs the induction time. So that is something that you can also do. And that comes in 3 different colors. Realize that anytime you use a white sealer, you're basically never going to get it done in 1 coat, no matter whose it is. It's just the nature of them. It basically is always 2 coats. Some you can get away with 1 coat, but mostly it's about 2 coats. Every other color, gray and or black, typically is just 1 coat, flash, move forward, and that's how it always is. So again, We have 2K sealers that you can do that are just standalone, ready to go sealers. We have DTM primers that you can turn into it. Now, also just a little caveat I want to add here. Not every single person's tech sheet's going to tell you to take their primer and turn it into a sealer. As you've seen me say in many groups at different times, sealers and primers, 2K primers, are 99.5% the same. The difference is going to be the fact that there can be sediment into primers, and sealers are strained and perfected to where you don't have to worry about trash. They're going to be as good off the gun as possible, and they're typically formulated with a very slow solvent package to allow them to flash and be slower to do a complete when you're doing a sealer. That way you have the best possible no texture moving forward. So that is something that you will notice when you're using a primer turned into a sealer. You may notice that it catches, some trash in the strainer that you're doing. You may notice that. You may notice that some of that trash makes it through the strainer and ends up on the job. And that's why a lot of people don't really like taking 2K primers and turning them into sealers, because they have had that happen in the past. So you can skip that by going with a ready-made sealer that's already at the viscosity it needs to be. If you needed to reduce it, you may reduce it 5% on preference, but most people are just going to go with it as a standard 4-to-1. So again, we have standalone sealers, we have primers turned into sealers, and then we have epoxies turned into sealers as well. And we covered that you don't always have to use a sealer. It's personal preference. I do personally think that sealers should be for for custom work and or like restoration work. I personally think that you should sand your sealer. I think that you will notice that when you do so, it'll make your base lay that much nicer. And when your base lays that much nicer, by the way, your clear lays that much nicer. So if you're using a clear that you're struggling with, no matter what the brand is, you may notice that if you are going over a perfectly smooth surface, your base would lay down nicer, then for your clear will lay down nicer. So that's just a little tip there. And anytime I've ever told that to somebody, they've had good success with that. So I do recommend that. So that covers kind of what I want to do. I don't think this one needs to be super long. I want it to be a little bit more than 3 minutes, but I don't need it to be the full 10 that I've been doing a little bit recently. So again, we have all of those options. You could use the options that you already have if you're comfortable using them, but this is just a little bit more tech knowledge for people who may not know why there's a sealer, why you should use sealers, or why you may not need to use sealers. Hopefully that was helpful. RevoltAutoPaint.com if you need any of those products. If you have any more recommendations on Tech Time with Tammy, please email them in to me and let us know, and or just shoot me a message and say, hey, I'd like to see you cover this. I would like to know your opinion. Again, all of this is my opinion. You can do with it what you'd like. You can skip over it. You can block me, or you can choose to listen to me and go from there. Take care, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.